John sat at the kitchen table, the old wood creaking under his weight. His fingers drummed nervously on the surface, glancing at the clock every few seconds. The phone finally rang, breaking the tense silence. His heart skipped a beat as he reached for it, his hands trembling slightly. "Hello?" he answered, his voice a mix of hope and fear. "Mr. Smith? This is Sarah from the adoption agency. I'm calling to let you know that Amina has arrived." John closed his eyes, exhaling a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Thank you, Sarah. We'll be there soon." He hung up and turned to Emily, who stood by the window, her eyes scanning the horizon as if she could see Amina arriving. "She's here," he said softly. Emily's eyes filled with a mixture of relief and anticipation. She crossed the room in a few quick strides, wrapping her arms around John. "This is it, John. She's finally here." Their home, nestled among tall pines and rolling hills in the small, peaceful town of Springfield, Vermont, had been a haven of quiet and sorrow since they lost their son, Michael. Now it was about to be filled with the presence of a new member, a new hope. They left the house, the cold air of early winter nipping at their faces. The drive to the orphanage was a blur of nervous thoughts and silent prayers. John's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel, while Emily fidgeted with her scarf, her eyes never leaving the road. As they pulled up to the orphanage, they saw a small, delicate figure standing by the entrance, clutching a worn-out doll. Amina. Her big eyes, filled with fear and curiosity, met theirs. John's heart ached at the sight of her vulnerability. They got out of the car and approached her slowly. Emily knelt down to Amina's level, her voice gentle and soothing. "Hello, Amina. We're so happy to meet you." Amina stared at Emily, her small body tense with apprehension. Emily pulled out her phone, opening a translation app. She spoke again, this time in Amina's native language, thanks to the app's help. Amina's eyes widened, and she glanced at John, then back at Emily. John knelt beside Emily, his face soft with kindness. He pointed to himself. "John," he said slowly, then pointed to Emily. "Emily." Amina clutched her doll tighter, her eyes darting between them. Emily gently reached out, not touching, just extending her hand in an invitation. "Home," she said, pointing back towards the car. The language barrier was tangible, but their determination to make her feel safe was even stronger. Amina hesitated, then slowly extended her small hand towards Emily's. The contact was brief, but significant. They led her to the car, and John opened the back door. Amina climbed in, still clutching her doll. The drive back to Springfield was wrapped in silence, the kind that carried a weight of unspoken words and unexpressed emotions. John focused on the road, his eyes occasionally flicking to the rearview mirror where he could see Amina clutching her worn-out doll. Emily turned in her seat every so often, offering Amina a gentle smile. Amina stared out the window, her eyes wide and unblinking as the Vermont landscape rolled past. The tall pines, their branches heavy with snow, cast long shadows across the road. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft orange glow that made everything seem surreal. John and Emily exchanged hopeful glances. They had prepared for this moment, but the reality of it was overwhelming. Amina's presence in their car was both a promise and a challenge, a silent reminder of the long journey ahead. As they pulled into the driveway, the familiar sight of their home brought a sense of comfort. The house stood warm and inviting, its windows glowing softly against the gathering dusk. Emily reached out and gently touched John's arm. "We're here," she said softly. John nodded, cutting the engine. "Amina," he said, turning to face her, "this is your home now. Amina's eyes shifted from the window to the house. She clutched her doll tighter, her small fingers gripping the fabric. John and Emily got out of the car and opened the back door. Emily extended her hand, and after a moment of hesitation, Amina placed her small hand in Emily's. They led her inside, where the warmth of the house enveloped them. The scent of fresh pine from the Christmas tree mixed with the faint aroma of cinnamon and apples. The living room was cozy, with a roaring fire in the fireplace casting dancing shadows on the walls. Colourful rugs covered the wooden floors, and shelves lined with books and family photos adorned the walls. Emily guided Amina through the house, pointing out different rooms with soft words. "This is the kitchen, where we'll have our meals together. And here's the living room, where we can read and play." Amina's eyes took in everything, wide with a mix of awe and confusion. They stopped in front of a door decorated with colourful stickers. Emily smiled. "This is your room, Amina." She opened the door to reveal a room filled with warmth and colour. Toys were neatly arranged on shelves, and a small bookshelf held picture books in different languages. A handmade quilt, stitched with care, lay on the bed, its vibrant patterns inviting. Amina stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room. She walked over to the bed and ran her fingers over the quilt, then picked up a small stuffed bear from the pillow. She hugged it to her chest, her expression softening for the first time since they had met her. Emily watched with a mixture of hope and helplessness. She knelt beside Amina, pointing to the books on the shelf. "Would you like to read a story?" Amina looked at the books, then back at Emily. She nodded slowly. Emily chose a picture book with bright illustrations and began to read, her voice gentle and soothing. Amina sat beside her, listening intently, her eyes following the pictures. As bedtime approached, Emily tucked Amina into the bed, pulling the quilt up to her chin. She sat beside her, brushing a strand of hair from Amina's forehead. "You're safe here, Amina. We're here for you." Amina's eyes filled with silent tears, and Emily felt a pang of helplessness. She leaned down and kissed Amina's forehead. "Good night, sweet girl," she whispered. John stood in the doorway, watching the tender moment. Emily joined him, and they closed the door quietly behind them. In the hallway, they stood together, the reality of their new life settling in. "She'll be okay," John said softly, wrapping an arm around Emily's shoulders. Emily nodded, her eyes moist with unshed tears. "I know. It's just going to take time." They made their way to the living room and sat by the fire, the flickering flames casting a warm glow. The silence was comforting now, filled with shared understanding and quiet determination. In her new room, Amina lay awake for a while, her eyes on the soft glow of the nightlight. She clutched the stuffed bear and her doll, feeling a strange mix of fear and hope. This was her new home, and though the journey had just begun, there was a tiny flicker of warmth in her heart. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of the quilt and the soft hum of the house lull her into a tentative sleep. Each day started with hope, though it often ended in quiet frustration. John and Emily's attempts to connect with Amina were persistent and patient. In the mornings, Emily would sit with Amina at the kitchen table, pointing at objects and repeating their names in English. "Table," she said, tapping the wooden surface. "Chair." Amina's eyes followed Emily's gestures, her expression a mix of concentration and confusion. John took a different approach. He would sit on the floor with Amina, building towers with blocks or fitting together puzzles. He talked to her softly, describing each piece as they worked. "This is a red block. It goes on top of the blue one." Amina watched, sometimes mimicking his actions but rarely speaking. Their efforts extended beyond the home. They enrolled Amina in the local school, hoping immersion would accelerate her language learning. The first day was filled with visible anxiety. As they approached the school, Amina's grip on Emily's hand tightened. Her eyes darted around, taking in the bustling activity of children laughing and talking. Emily knelt down to Amina's level, her voice calm. "It's okay, Amina. You'll make friends here. We'll be back to pick you up soon." She kissed Amina's forehead, but Amina's eyes remained wide with fear. Inside the classroom, the teacher, Mrs. Thompson, greeted them warmly. "Welcome, Amina. We're so glad to have you here." She led Amina to a seat near the window. Emily lingered for a moment, watching as Amina sat stiffly, her eyes fixed on her desk. "She'll be okay," Mrs. Thompson reassured Emily. "It might take some time, but she'll adapt." Emily nodded, though her heart ached with worry. She walked away slowly, glancing back one last time before leaving the building. Throughout the day, Amina's eyes followed the other children. She watched them interact, her interest and fear battling visibly in her expression. During recess, she stood apart, clutching her doll, observing the laughter and games from a distance. Emily couldn't help but worry. From her car in the parking lot, she watched the playground, her eyes searching for Amina. Seeing her standing alone, Emily felt a mix of sadness and determination. She knew this process would be slow, but seeing Amina so isolated tugged at her heart. At home, the evenings were a blend of routine and silent hope. Emily read stories to Amina, pointing at the pictures and naming the characters. John would join them, his deep voice adding warmth to the narrative. Amina listened, her eyes following the illustrations, but her silence was persistent. One night, as Emily prepared for bed, she heard a soft sound from Amina's room. Pushing the door open slightly, she saw Amina sitting on the bed, clutching her doll, tears streaming down her face. The sight was heartbreaking. Emily approached slowly, her voice gentle. "Amina, sweetheart, what's wrong?" She sat on the edge of the bed, reaching out to touch Amina's shoulder. Amina didn't respond, her tears falling silently. Emily felt a deep sense of helplessness. She wrapped her arms around Amina, holding her close. "It's okay, sweetie. You're safe here. We're here for you." She rocked gently, her own eyes filling with tears. John appeared in the doorway, concern etched on his face. He joined them, sitting on the other side of Amina. "We love you, Amina. We're here to help you." His voice was steady, filled with a quiet strength. The three of them sat there, the room filled with the quiet sounds of Amina's sobs and the comforting murmurs of John and Emily. The moment was raw and real, a testament to the struggles they faced together. As the days turned into weeks, their routine continued, each small moment of connection a victory. John's patience was a constant source of strength. Together, they faced each day with hope, believing that, in time, Amina would find her voice and feel the love that surrounded her. The days in Springfield continued with a quiet rhythm, marked by small moments of hope and connection. John and Emily's home, nestled among Vermont's tall pines, became a haven for slow but steady progress. Each morning, Emily would sit with Amina at the kitchen table, spreading out picture books. She would point to each image, enunciating the words clearly. "Dog," she said, tapping the picture of a happy Labrador. "Cat." For weeks, Amina simply watched, her eyes following Emily's finger, but never repeating the words. Then, one morning, as Emily pointed to a picture of a bird, Amina's eyes lit up. Her small hand reached out, gently touching the image. Emily smiled, her heart swelling with hope. The discovery of Amina's love for drawing was another turning point. It happened one rainy afternoon when Emily found Amina sitting quietly by the window, staring at the raindrops sliding down the glass. Emily placed a box of crayons and a stack of paper on the table nearby. "Would you like to draw, Amina?" she asked softly, not expecting a response. To her surprise, Amina's eyes brightened. She reached for the crayons, her fingers wrapping around a blue one. Emily watched as Amina began to draw, her strokes hesitant at first, then more confident. The first picture was simple, a house with a tree beside it. Over the following days, the drawings became more detailed, depicting scenes from Amina's past. The first words Amina spoke were a quiet whisper in the evening light. Emily had just finished reading a bedtime story and was tucking Amina in. "Thank you," Amina whispered, her voice barely audible. Emily froze, her heart pounding. She looked at Amina, whose eyes were filled with sincerity and gratitude. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she leaned down, kissing Amina's forehead. "You're welcome, sweetheart," she whispered back, her voice thick with emotion. John and Emily's efforts to build trust with Amina were gentle and patient. John would spend time with her in the evenings, showing her how to build small models from blocks or play simple games. His voice was always calm, his actions deliberate. "See, Amina, this piece goes here," he would say, guiding her hands with his. Amina's trust in John and Emily grew slowly, like a fragile plant reaching for sunlight. She began to seek them out, sitting close to them during meals and reaching for their hands during walks. Her fear slowly gave way to cautious curiosity. One evening, John found Amina in the living room, her crayons spread out on the floor. She was drawing a picture of a garden with flowers and butterflies. He sat down beside her, watching her work. "That's beautiful, Amina," he said softly. Amina looked up at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "Garden," she said, pointing to the picture. John's heart swelled with pride. "Yes, a garden. You're a wonderful artist, Amina." The progress was slow, but each small victory brought them closer together. Emily continued to read to Amina every night, their bond strengthening with each story. John's gentle encouragement during their playtime built a foundation of trust that Amina desperately needed. The turning point came one evening when Amina climbed onto John's lap, laying her head against his chest. It was a silent gesture of trust and affection that spoke volumes. John wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. Emily watched from the doorway, her eyes moist with tears of joy. In those moments, the Smith family found a new rhythm, a quiet harmony that filled their home with warmth and love. Amina's small victories were celebrated with genuine joy, her progress marking the slow but steady journey toward healing and belonging. Each day brought them closer together, the bonds of trust and love growing stronger with every whispered word and shared smile. The days grew longer as spring slowly breathed new life into Springfield. The tall pines surrounding John and Emily's home began to show hints of green, and the air was filled with the promise of renewal. Amidst this change, small fragments of Amina's past started to surface, pieced together through her drawings and the few words she spoke. One evening, as Emily helped Amina organize her drawings, she noticed a recurring figure in several of them, a man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Who is this, Amina?" Emily asked, pointing to the figure. Amina hesitated, her fingers tracing the outline of the man. "William," she said softly. "William Harris." Emily looked at John, who had been watching from the doorway. They exchanged a glance filled with unspoken questions. "Was he someone special to you?" Emily asked gently. Amina nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and gratitude. "He protected us." Intrigued and determined to learn more about William Harris, John decided to explore the woods behind their home, a place that Amina had mentioned in her fragmented stories. One afternoon he set out, the dense forest canopy casting dappled shadows on the ground. As he ventured deeper, he stumbled upon an old, abandoned house. The weathered structure stood silently, its walls covered in ivy and its windows broken. Curiosity piqued. John stepped inside, the floorboards creaking under his weight. The house was filled with remnants of someone's past life. Faded photographs, rusted tools, and an old journal lying on a dusty table. John picked up the journal, flipping through its pages. It was filled with entries about the community, names of people, and mentions of protection and safety. The name William Harris appeared frequently. John's heart raced as he realized he had stumbled upon a significant piece of Amina's past. Determined to learn more, John returned home and shared his findings with Emily. "I found the house," he said, placing the journal on the kitchen table. "It belonged to William Harris. There's a lot about him in here." Emily's eyes widened as she skimmed through the journal. "This could help us understand what Amina went through," she said, her voice filled with hope. The next day, John decided to visit the local community center, hoping to find someone who knew more about William Harris. It was there he met Frank, an elderly man with a weathered face and kind eyes. Frank was sitting by the window, reading a newspaper. "Excuse me," John said, approaching him. "I'm looking for information about a man named William Harris. Do you know anything about him?" Frank looked up, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied John. "William Harris, you say?" he asked, setting the newspaper aside. "He was a good man. Protected a lot of people during some tough times." John pulled up a chair, eager to hear more. "What do you mean by tough times?" Frank sighed, leaning back in his chair. "There were some dangerous folks around here a few years back. William took it upon himself to protect the community. He set up safe houses, helped people escape when things got bad." John listened intently as Frank recounted stories of William's bravery and dedication. "He disappeared a while ago," Frank continued, his voice tinged with sadness. "No one knows what happened to him, but he made a real difference while he was here." Returning home, John shared Frank's stories with Emily. They pieced together the information they had gathered, slowly unraveling the threads of Amina's past. They realized the dangers she had faced and the lengths William Harris had gone to protect her and others. Emily held Amina close that evening, her heart aching for the little girl who had endured so much. "William was a very brave man," she said softly. "He cared about you a lot." Amina nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "He saved me." The discovery of William Harris's story brought a new depth to their understanding of Amina. It explained her fear, her silence, and the heavy burden she carried. Spring in Springfield brought a warmth that seeped through the tall pines and into the Smiths' cozy home. The discoveries about William Harris had been enlightening, yet the shadows of Amina's past still loomed large. Determined to piece together more of her story, John and Emily invited Frank over one afternoon. They hoped he could shed more light on the events that had shaped Amina's young life. Frank arrived, his eyes reflecting the weight of memories long buried. He sat at the kitchen table, his hands clasped tightly around a steaming cup of coffee. John and Emily sat across from him, their expressions a mix of anticipation and concern. "Thank you for coming, Frank," John began. "We appreciate any information you can share about William Harris and what happened to Amina." Frank nodded, his gaze distant. Emily leaned in, her voice soft. "What happened to Amina's parents?" Frank sighed deeply, the lines on his face deepening. "Amina's parents were good people, but they got involved with some very dangerous men. One night, those men came for them. William tried to protect Amina and her family. He managed to get Amina out, but her parents didn't make it. John's jaw tightened. And William? He was captured, Frank said quietly. He disappeared soon after. No one knows what happened to him, but it's believed those men took him. The room fell into a heavy silence, the weight of Frank's words sinking in. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she glanced at Amina, who was sitting at the far end of the table, listening intently. Amina's eyes widened with understanding and sorrow. The realization of what had happened to her parents and the extent of William's sacrifice hit her hard. She looked at Frank, her small hands trembling. "He saved me," she whispered, her voice cracking. Frank nodded, his eyes softening. "He did, Amina. He thought the world of you." Amina stood up abruptly and ran to her room. Emily followed, finding Amina on the floor, surrounded by crayons and paper. She was furiously drawing, tears streaming down her face. Emily knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" Emily asked softly. Amina sniffled, holding up the picture. It showed a man with kind eyes, standing protectively in front of a small girl. "William," she said simply. "He protected me." Emily's heart ached as she pulled Amina into a hug. "He did, and he was very brave," she whispered, her own voice thick with emotion. They stayed like that for a while, the only sounds in the room: Amina's quiet sobs and Emily's soothing murmurs. John stood in the doorway, his eyes filled with sadness and determination. Later that evening, John and Emily sat together, discussing how they could help Amina find closure. "We need to honor William's memory," John said. "Amina needs to understand that it's okay to grieve, but also to remember him with love and respect." Emily nodded. "We could hold a small memorial for William. It might help Amina feel connected to her past and find some peace." They shared their idea with Amina the next day. Emily explained gently, "We want to honor William, Amina, to thank him for everything he did for you and to remember him in a special way." Amina looked at them with wide eyes. "How?" "We can have a small ceremony," John said. "You can draw something for him, and we can say a few words about what he meant to us." Amina's face brightened slightly. "I'd like that," she said. Amina spent hours drawing pictures of William and her parents, each one filled with vibrant colors and poignant details. John and Emily helped her write a small speech, encouraging her to express her feelings. Preparations for the memorial began with quiet determination. John and Emily wanted it to be a meaningful event, one that would honor William Harris's bravery and the sacrifices he had made. The first step was involving the community, who had also felt the impact of William's actions. John visited the local community center, speaking with Frank and other residents who remembered William. "We're planning a memorial," he explained. "We want to honor William Harris and the role he played in protecting our community. We'd love your support." The response was overwhelmingly positive. Neighbors offered to help with arrangements, some bringing flowers, others preparing food. The local florist donated a beautiful wreath, and the town hall provided a space for the ceremony. Back at home, Amina was deeply involved in the preparations. She spent hours drawing pictures of William, her parents, and the life they had before tragedy struck. Her drawings were vivid and detailed, each stroke of the crayon a step toward healing. Emily helped Amina organize her drawings into a booklet. "These are beautiful, Amina," she said, her voice soft with admiration. "They'll be a wonderful tribute to William." Amina nodded, her eyes serious. "I want everyone to know how brave he was," she said quietly. As the day of the memorial approached, the Smith household buzzed with activity. Emily and John worked late into the night, ensuring everything was perfect. They printed programs, set up chairs, and arranged Amina's drawings on a table at the front of the room. Finally, the day arrived. The town hall was filled with friends, neighbors, and community members. The atmosphere was solemn, yet filled with a sense of unity and shared purpose. The front of the room was adorned with flowers, Amina's drawings, and a large photo of William Harris, his kind eyes looking out over the gathering. Amina stood beside Emily, her small hands trembling slightly. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" Emily asked, giving her a reassuring smile. Amina took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, I'm ready." John stepped up to the podium first, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Thank you all for coming today. We're here to honor William Harris, a man who gave so much to protect others. His bravery and kindness will never be forgotten." He shared stories of William's acts of heroism, recounting the times he had risked his life to help those in need. The audience listened intently, many nodding in agreement and wiping away tears. Next, Emily spoke about the importance of remembering those who have made a difference in our lives. William Harris was more than a protector. He was a friend, a neighbor, and a beacon of hope during dark times. We honor him today and always. Finally, it was Amina's turn. She stepped up to the podium, her hands clutching the edges tightly. Her voice was soft but clear. "William saved me," she began, her eyes scanning the faces before her. "He was brave, and he loved me. I miss him, but I want to thank him for everything he did." She held up her booklet of drawings, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "These are my memories of William. He will always be in my heart." The room was silent for a moment, then filled with the sound of applause. The community's reaction was one of deep support and understanding. Many approached Amina after the ceremony, offering words of comfort and admiration. "You're a brave girl," one elderly woman said, patting Amina's shoulder. "William would be so proud of you." That evening, as the last guests left and the town hall grew quiet, Amina turned to John and Emily. "I want to do more," she said, her voice filled with determination. Emily knelt down beside her. "What do you mean, Amina?" "I want to help other children," Amina explained, "like William helped me. Can we make a fund to help children in need?" John and Emily exchanged a proud glance. "That's a wonderful idea, Amina," John said. "We can call it the William Harris Memorial Fund." Springfield's community center buzzed with activity as neighbors gathered for the first meeting of the William Harris Memorial Fund. The room was filled with a mix of anticipation and resolve. John and Emily sat at the front, a stack of papers before them, while Amina stood nearby, clutching a drawing she had made for the occasion. John began the meeting, his voice steady but filled with purpose. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to honor William Harris by helping children in need, just as he helped Amina." Emily took over, explaining the fund's mission and the importance of their support. "Our goal is to provide resources and opportunities for children who face difficult circumstances. We want to continue William's legacy of kindness and protection." The room filled with nods of agreement and murmurs of support. As the meeting progressed, ideas flowed freely. One neighbor suggested organizing a charity walk, another offered to host a bake sale. Amina listened intently, her eyes bright with excitement. "I'd like to share something," Amina said, stepping forward. Her small voice quieted the room. She held up her drawing, a colorful depiction of William Harris surrounded by children. "William saved me, and I want to help save others. This fund is our way of saying thank you and making sure his bravery isn't forgotten." The room erupted in applause, the community's support for Amina and the fund solidifying in that moment. Plans were set into motion, committees formed, and tasks assigned. The Smith family left the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to turn their vision into reality. In the following weeks, the process of establishing the fund unfolded with a blend of determination and community spirit. Meetings were held at the community center where neighbors brainstormed and planned events. John and Emily worked tirelessly, managing logistics and ensuring that every detail was addressed. Amina played an active role, her involvement becoming a cornerstone of the fund's efforts. She shared her story at every opportunity, speaking at local schools and community gatherings. Her heartfelt words and drawings touched many, inspiring donations and volunteer support. One afternoon, Emily and Amina visited a local business to discuss sponsorship for an upcoming event. The owner, a kind man named Mr. Peterson, listened attentively as Amina spoke about the fund's mission. "I was saved by someone who cared," Amina said, her voice steady. "Now I want to help other children feel safe and loved." Mr. Peterson smiled warmly. "I'm in. Whatever you need, count on us to help." The first project funded by the William Harris Memorial Fund was a summer camp for underprivileged children. The camp provided a safe space for children to play, learn, and grow, surrounded by nature. Amina's eyes sparkled with joy as she helped set up the camp, her drawings decorating the cabins and activity areas. On the opening day, the camp was filled with laughter and excitement. Children ran through the fields, played games, and shared stories by the campfire. Amina watched them, her heart swelling with pride. She knew that this was just the beginning, that William's legacy would continue to touch lives in profound ways. Back at home, the Smith family's bond grew stronger with each passing day. The shared mission of the fund brought them closer together, their hearts united in a common purpose. John and Emily marveled at Amina's increasing confidence and happiness, the shadows of her past gradually giving way to the light of new beginnings. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, John turned to Amina. "You've done something amazing, Amina. You're helping so many children." Amina smiled, her eyes reflecting the colors of the fading light. "We did it together," she said. "William would be proud." Emily squeezed Amina's hand, her heart full of love. Yes, he would. As the summer days turned to fall, the William Harris Memorial Fund continued to grow, its impact reaching far beyond Springfield. The community rallied around the cause, their support unwavering. Each project, each child helped, was a testament to the power of compassion and the enduring strength of a legacy built on love. Winter had settled over Springfield, transforming the town into a serene, snowy landscape. The tall pines were dusted with snow, and the quiet stillness of the season brought a sense of peace and reflection. For the Smith family, it symbolized a fresh start and new beginnings. Inside their cozy home, the fireplace crackled warmly, casting a soft glow on the living room. John, Emily, and Amina sat together, immersed in the simple joys of daily life. Amina was drawing by the fire, her brow furrowed in concentration as she added details to a snowy landscape scene. Emily watched her with a smile, her heart swelling with pride. "That's beautiful, Amina. You've really captured the winter wonderland outside." Amina looked up, her eyes bright. "Thanks, Mum. I wanted to show how pretty it is when it snows." John entered the room, carrying a tray of hot cocoa. "Who's ready for some cocoa?" he asked, setting the tray down on the coffee table. Amina's face lit up, and she eagerly reached for a mug. Their evenings were filled with moments like these, simple, yet deeply meaningful. They read stories, played games, and shared their thoughts and dreams. The bond between them had grown stronger, each day reinforcing the trust and affection they felt for one another. As the snow continued to fall outside, Amina found herself reflecting on her journey. She thought about the dark times she had endured, the loss and fear that had once overshadowed her life. But those memories were now accompanied by the warmth and love of her new family. She glanced at John and Emily, who were chatting softly by the fire. They had become her anchors, their unwavering support helping her heal and grow. Amina felt safe and loved in a way she had never imagined possible. "Dad," Amina said quietly, "do you think William would be happy with what we've done with the fund?" John looked at her, his eyes soft. "I think he'd be very proud, Amina. You've honored his memory in the best way possible." Emily nodded in agreement. "The William Harris Memorial Fund has helped so many children already. It's a wonderful legacy." The fund had indeed made a significant impact. It had provided resources for underprivileged children, supported educational programs, and created safe spaces for those in need. The community's response had been overwhelmingly positive, with many coming forward to volunteer and donate. Amina's involvement had been a driving force behind the fund's success. Her story inspired others, and her dedication to helping children had resonated deeply with the community. The fund's future looked bright, and its positive impact continued to grow. One afternoon, as the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the snowy landscape, the family decided to take a walk. They bundled up in warm coats and scarves, stepping out into the crisp winter air. The snow crunched under their boots as they made their way to a nearby hill. At the top of the hill, they paused to take in the view. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, and the town below glowed softly in the fading light. It was a moment of quiet beauty, a reminder of the journey they had shared. John put his arm around Emily, and Amina stood between them, feeling the warmth of their love. "We've come a long way," John said, his voice filled with gratitude. Emily nodded, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. "We have, and we have so much to look forward to." Amina looked up at them, her heart full. "Thank you for everything," she said. "I love you both so much." John and Emily hugged her tightly, their embrace a testament to the strength of their family bond. "We love you too, Amina," Emily whispered. As they stood there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, they felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. Their journey had been marked by challenges and triumphs, but it had brought them to this moment of unity and hope. The Smith family's future was bright, filled with the promise of new beginnings and the enduring power of love. Together, they would continue to honor William Harris's legacy, making a difference in the lives of those who needed it most. As the last light of day faded, they turned back towards their home, their hearts light with the knowledge that they were stronger together. The journey ahead was still unwritten, but with each other's support, they were ready to face whatever came their way. In the quiet stillness of the winter night, the Smith family walked hand in hand, grateful for their journey and hopeful for the future, united by love and resilience.